There are some romances that don't end with a conclusion. They continue, but continue in a different way. Fall of sophomore year arrived with cold winds sweeping across Lake Michigan. I stood in front of Northwestern's library, holding a cup of cooled coffee, watching couples pass by. There were guys holding hands across the campus without anyone glancing back. There were light kisses placed on lips right under the maple trees. Freedom. I once thought freedom was something you had to fight for. Now I realize freedom can also be something you have to learn to believe you deserve. Brooks and I were no longer in the breathing space. We got back together at the end of freshman year, but this time it was completely different. Not the clinging kind of love, but the kind of love because both of us had tried standing on our own. We video called less than before. No more texting you up at 2 a.m. just to fill the longing. Instead, there were long conversations about the future. After college, where do you think you'll be? Brooks asked one evening. I don't know, I replied. Maybe Chicago or New York. Brooks smiled. Seattle. I looked at him through the screen. You want to go back? Brooks nodded slowly. Maybe. There. I never had to shrink myself. That statement didn't make me jealous. It made me think. We started facing questions bigger than long distance. How would we build a shared future if each person's dreams were in different directions? That December, I drove 5 hours to Michigan again. Snow blanketed the campus. Brooks greeted me with a long hug. How long are you staying this time? He asked. The whole week. Winter break. Brooks smiled, but there was something different in his eyes. That night, we lay next to each other in the small room. He gently traced his finger along my collarbone. Slowly, as if relearning my body from the beginning. The distance didn't just make us miss each other. It made every touch deeper. Mateo? Brooks whispered, his lips brushing my neck. Do you ever fear we're growing in different directions? I didn't answer right away. My hand tightened slightly on his back. Yes, I admitted. We no longer avoided it. Not because we loved less, but because we loved enough to dare look at the fear. That night we weren't rushed. Not frantic like the first reunion after the breathing space. We were slow, as if each kiss was a question, each touch a promise. I lay beneath him, watching the faint golden light cast on his dark hair. Brooks kissed me not to possess, but to hold. Hold us. Hold what had once started in a small gym in Illinois. Afterward, when our breathing evened out, Brooks said, if one day we have to choose where to live, would you choose me? That question made my heart ache. Don't make me the destination, I said softly. I don't want you to give up your dreams for me. What about you? I fell silent. For the first time, I realized. Loving someone isn't just daring to hold their hand in the hallway. It's also daring to accept that love doesn't guarantee everything will go the same path. Spring of sophomore year came with an unexpected event. Brooks called me at midnight. My mom's in the hospital. My heart dropped out of my chest. What? Why?
Car accident.
Not serious, but needs surgery. I packed and took the first bus to Michigan. No longer just a boyfriend visiting, but a lover coming to stay. I stayed with Brooks through those hospital days, watching him curled up in the waiting chair, hands clenched around his phone. For the first time since we fell in love, I saw him small. Not the guy who once punched a locker in the locker room. Not the one who dared hold my hand in the hallway. Just a guy afraid of losing his mom. I sat down beside him, wrapping my arm around his shoulder. Are we okay? Brooks asked, eyes red. We're okay, I replied. Because I'm here. That's when I understood. The love between two guys isn't always a fight against the world. Sometimes it's sitting in a hospital waiting room, hands intertwined, and knowing that no matter where the future goes, this moment is real. Brooks's mom made it through the surgery. Everything gradually returned to normal. But after that event, we changed a little more. We started talking about us not just as the present, but as a long-term possibility. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the biggest question. Can love at 17 survive until 22? We were trying to find the answer. Not with promises, but with each day we stayed. That summer, everything changed in a way I didn't expect. Brooks's mom needed longer recovery time than anticipated, so he decided to intern in Seattle to be near her. When I heard the news, my heart tightened. Seattle, the city he once said was where he could be himself more. And me? I stayed in Chicago, taking an internship at a small magazine. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was truly stepping into the adult world. Deadlines, tough bosses, networking events full of lights and business cards. We entered the summer with a new challenge. Not just different schools, but different states, different time zones. The distance went from 5 hours driving to 4 hours flying. In the early days, we tried to keep the old rhythm. Video calls every night, sharing little stories. Seattle's still damp and cloudy, Brooks said in one call, wind tousling his hair. I think you suit the rain. I smiled. You suit Chicago's wind more. Small jokes kept us together. But then work swept me away. There were nights I got back to my room at 1 a.m., too exhausted to open FaceTime. There were mornings I woke up to messages from Brooks sent 3 hours earlier. Wish you were here. I started feeling like I was living two lives. One life in Chicago, full of opportunities, full of newness. And one life on the phone screen. One late July evening, Brooks said something that made my heart stop. I got offered a part-time position for senior year in Seattle. I was silent for a few seconds. The design company you like? Yeah. His voice wasn't as excited as I thought. Are you happy? I asked. Brooks took a deep breath. Happy, but also scared. Scared of what? Scared that if I choose Seattle, you won't be the center of my future anymore. That statement choked me up. Brooks, I said slowly, I don't want to be the center. I want to be a part. On the other end, he looked at me for a long time. So if I stay in Seattle after graduation? I prepared for that question. But when it was really said, it still hurt. Then we'll have to decide again, I replied. Decide what again? Whether we want the same future or not. No one got angry. No one cried. Just the truth, raw and much more mature than two 17-year-old boys. In August, I flew to Seattle to visit Brooks. The first time I saw the city with my own eyes. Light rain, humid air, small coffee shops scattered on the hills. Brooks led me through Capitol Hill, where rainbow flags hung in front of many shops. Here, I don't have to explain anything, he said. We passed a male-male couple kissing in front of a bar without anyone caring. I could feel Brooks's gaze on them. Not jealousy, but longing. That night, in the small room he rented temporarily, Brooks hugged me from behind as we stood by the window looking down at the city. Can you imagine living here? He asked. I looked at the lights reflecting on the wet roads. Yes, I admitted. But I can also imagine living in Chicago. Brooks rested his chin on my shoulder. We're no longer two kids afraid of a small town, he said. Now we're afraid of the future. I turned around, kissing him slowly.
No, iwisparat.
I'm not afraid of the future. I'm just afraid of a future without you. That night, we made love as if time didn't exist. Not proving anything. Just two guys trying to etch each other's image into memory, in case one day we had to live farther than 4 hours by plane. After the Seattle trip, I started asking the question I'd avoided before. If love requires one person to move, who will it be? Fall of senior year arrived. Brooks officially accepted the part-time position at the design company in Seattle, working remotely until graduation. I received an offer for a long-term internship at the magazine in Chicago, with the potential to become full-time. Both of us were at the threshold. One evening, Brooks said, Mateo, we can't avoid it forever. I know. If we both stay in our cities. What then? Then we'll try for another year, I said. And if after a year it's still this far? I looked at him through the screen, feeling fatigue creep in. Brooks, do you want me to move to Seattle? That question hung between us. Brooks didn't answer right away. I don't want you to give up Chicago for me, he said finally. But you want me there? He bit his lip. Yes, the truth is always simple. But the choice isn't. At the end of the semester, I was invited to a big project in Chicago. An opportunity that could shape my entire writing career. At the same time, Brooks was offered a full-time contract after graduation. Seattle was no longer a possibility. It became a plan. One April night, we talked for 3 hours.
No crying. No anger.
Just analyzing like two adults considering a contract. We've gone through the small town, Brooks said. Through long-distance 5 hours driving. Through the breathing space. But this time is different, I continued. Yeah. This time not because of fear, I said. But because of ambition. Brooks smiled sadly. Maybe love doesn't always win. I shook my head. Or maybe love isn't meant to win, but to teach us who we are. Silence. Then Brooks said something I'll never forget. If I have to choose between loving you and becoming the best version of myself, I want to find a way to do both. I took a deep breath. Then let's try one more time, I said. Not because we're afraid of losing each other, but because we still want to. We decided not to break up. Not yet, but both knew. Senior year would be the biggest test. Not because of others, but because of our own dreams. And for the first time since the kiss after the gym at 17, I understood that love between two guys isn't just courage against prejudice, but also courage against the future. Senior year wasn't noisy. It quietly stretched us thin. Brooks was busy with his portfolio with online interviews with the team in Seattle. I was drowning in articles, deadlines, pitching ideas to the magazine in Chicago. We still video called. But between the "how was your day?" was a new silence. The silence of people preparing to step into real life. One October evening, while I was in the library, Brooks texted, "Official offer." My heart pounded. I stepped outside, calling him right away. "When does it start?" "June. After graduation." I leaned against the cold brick wall. "Congratulations," I said, and I meant it. Brooks smiled, but in that smile was a streak of sadness. "And you? The magazine wants me to stay. Full-time." We stood at opposite ends of the line, two cities, two futures almost locked in. "Mateo," Brooks said softly, "we can't pretend this is just another semester." "I know. So what do we do?" That question was no longer theoretical. It was reality approaching. In December, I went to Michigan for Brooks's graduation. I stood in the auditorium watching him walk on stage to receive his diploma. He was taller than I remembered, broader shoulders, eyes much more mature than the 17-year-old boy who once said, "Dance with me?" When he looked down at the stands and found me in the crowd, that smile was still like the first day. After the ceremony, we hugged each other long in the cold outside. "Now it's official," Brooks said. "Yeah. 3 months until I moved to Seattle." "Yeah." We didn't cry. Not yet. That night, in the nearly empty dorm room, Brooks pulled me close. "Stay with me tonight," he said. I stayed. We made love not in haste, not in fear, but in the clear awareness that time could change everything. I remember clearly how Brooks looked at me afterward. "No matter what happens," he said, "you're my first love." "I don't want to just be the first love," I whispered. Brooks touched my cheek. "Then don't let us end as a memory." But life doesn't run on pleas. June came faster than I imagined. Brooks moved to Seattle. I stayed in Chicago. For the first time in years, we no longer shared the semester rhythm. No more breaks to count down to. Just work. New life. New responsibilities. In the first weeks, we tried to keep in touch like before. But now, when I got off work at 8 p.m. in Chicago, Brooks was just ending his day in Seattle. The time zones weren't that different, but the rhythms of life were. Brooks started talking about colleagues, projects, brainstorming sessions that ran late. I listened, trying not to show the feeling of being out of place. One evening, Brooks mentioned a name I'd heard before. "Ethan's on the same team as me. Remember?" My heart stopped. "Yeah. We work together a lot. He just broke up with his boyfriend." I was silent a few seconds too long. "Mateo? I'm here." Don't overthink it. I'm not. But I was. Not because I didn't trust Brooks, but because I started feeling like I wasn't in his daily world anymore. In August, I flew to Seattle. Unannounced. I just wanted to see Brooks in his new environment. When I arrived at the company office to wait, I saw him standing next to a dark-haired guy, laughing loudly. Ethan. They stood very close. Not over the line, but enough for me to feel an invisible distance between me and Brooks. When Brooks saw me, he was surprised, then smiled brightly. Mateo? You didn't say. I wanted to surprise you. He hugged me. The hug was still familiar, but something was different. Not cold, just no longer exclusive. That night, in the small apartment Brooks rented, we talked. I see you thriving here, I said. Brooks looked around the room. Maybe. And I'm not in that picture. He came closer to me. Don't say that. But that's how I feel. Silence. Mateo, I'm growing up, Brooks said. So are you. I know. And growing up doesn't mean loving less. But it could mean loving in a different way, I replied. We sat on the floor, backs against the sofa.
No arguing. No blaming.
Just two guys realizing that young love was entering its hardest phase. Maybe we've tried to hold on to our high school images of each other too long, I said softly. Brooks looked at me, eyes wet. Maybe. That night, we didn't make love. We lay next to each other, but between our bodies was a big question. The next morning, as faint sunlight filtered through the curtains, Brooks said, Mateo, if we let go, does that mean we failed? I looked at the ceiling.
No, Irraplia.
It just means we loved fully in that phase. Brooks turned to look at me. So you're saying? I took a deep breath. I don't want to continue just because I'm afraid of losing the memories. Brooks's tears fell before mine. I wiped them away. We once didn't need to run from the small town, I said. Now we don't need to run from the truth. And what's the truth? That we love each other. But we're heading in two directions. The room was silent. Finally, Brooks nodded. So let's stop. While we still respect each other. We hugged one last time in that Seattle apartment. Not like two scared guys, but like two adults who know that sometimes love doesn't end because the love is gone, but because both deserve to live their dreams fully. When I boarded the plane back to Chicago, I didn't cry. I looked out the window, the city shrinking below. Seattle, the city where Brooks found his fullest self. And I realized, first love isn't meant to be kept forever, but to teach us how to love without shrinking ourselves. But I didn't know that years later, we would meet again, and that time the story would be different.